Ruslan made a video criticizing Rhett from Good Mythical Morning when he was on the podcast Within Reason with Alex O'Connor. There are some comments that he made that I just disagree with, and that's fine, but there's other parts that he very much took Rhett out of context or just completely misunderstood what he was saying, and I think these are worth addressing.
So then the idea of considering evolution, which just felt, I was like, am I actually about to do this? And I was like, well, I think C.S. Lewis believed in evolution. You start saying these things like, yeah, but there's people.
Okay. So he just kind of brushes over C.S. Lewis. I'm sorry, but C.S. Lewis is arguably the greatest apologist of the last century.
That's cool, but it has nothing to do with his point.
And not only that, also wrote some of the most best-selling books of the last century and ushered in stuff like The Chronicles of Narnia, which is getting a second remake from Disney.
This also has nothing to do with Rhett's point.
This is someone that had a massive ripple effect and was unapologetically Christian, wrote a book called Mere Christianity, and he's saying here, oh yeah, I think C.S. Lewis may have been open to evolution or something like that, which that in itself would frame that this is a completely categorical error.
No, it's actually not. And let's go back and see the full clip of what Rhett said and see what the context is and what he's actually trying to say and why it has nothing to do with any of the point that Ruslan just made about C.S. Lewis and what C.S. Lewis accomplished in his lifetime.
Considering evolution, which just felt, I was like, am I actually about to do this? And I was like, well, I think C.S. Lewis believed in evolution. You start saying these things like, yeah, but there's a lot of Christians who are like theistic evolutionists. And okay, so maybe there's something to this.
So there's no point made here about C.S. Lewis not being a great apologist or not being a reliable source. What Rhett is saying is that when you have these two conflicting ideas, like the Genesis creation account and evolution, you are forced to do one of two things. Either reconcile these accounts or look at them and say, okay, one of these is true and one of these is false. Now, previously to learning about evolution, Rhett had held the view that these views were not reconcilable. So this left him the issue of, like he said, am I really considering that evolution is true? And then he goes and thinks about all these great theologians like C.S. Lewis and thinks, oh, C.S. Lewis believes in evolution, so maybe I can still believe in evolution, and I don't have to just throw it out and say the Bible doesn't have room for this. That was the point that he was making. Not that C.S. Lewis isn't credible, but that he actually is a credible source, as well as these other people that he goes to and reads their books because they are credible sources to him, and they both believe in evolution and believe in the Bible. I will let Dr. Frank Turek, the Christian apologist, explain a little bit more about why it conflicts with the biblical narrative of the Genesis creation.
This is the first question,
All right.
okay? And this is from our patrons. So the first one is the Bible compatible with evolution, meaning common ancestry is true, but the process was guided?
Well, it depends on what you mean by that. If you mean biblical inerrancy, it doesn't appear to be compatible because you've got God creating Adam out of the dust, not out of pre-existing animal forms. So I would say no. But even if macroevolution were true, and I don't think it is, but even if it were true, that wouldn't mean Christianity was false. It would give us problems for biblical inerrancy in the Old Testament, but it wouldn't mean Christianity was false. God could still exist and Christianity could still be true because Jesus came and died and rose from the dead. So it's a secondary issue in my view, evolution. It's an interesting issue, but it's a secondary issue. It's not an essential of the faith one way or the other.
Okay. So why do you say that we'd have to reject? Is that what you're saying? We'd have to reject biblical inerrancy in order to adopt?
If we're going to say, or unless we're just going to allegorize the whole thing and say when Genesis says that God created Adam out of the dust, that was just a metaphor of some kind for God created.
So while no, evolution does not disprove that the Bible is true, it does throw a wrench in the narrative that a lot of Christians hold, where the Adam and Eve story is a literal account of what happened in history.
Big Bang itself was coined by a Catholic priest. So this is Georges Lemaitre. This is the guy who coined the idea of the Big Bang. He's standing next to Einstein. So it's not that Christians have been afraid of these conversations.
And Rhett doesn't say that the Big Bang theory is problematic for the Bible. I don't know of an apologist who does hold that theory. I mean, even as Frank Turek says, he believes that the Big Bang Theory happened. He just believed that God is the one that banged it, which is unfortunate wording that I wish he would stop using, but I digress. So it seems to me, and I don't want to strawman Ruslan here either, but it seems that he's trying to make Rhett look like Rhett is saying that Christians can't follow science, but that's not at all what he's saying. He's just saying that the evolution account doesn't line up with the biblical narrative. And that's why it's challenging for him and for a lot of Christians, or a lot of Christians just reject it, while the Big Bang Theory is not something that's rejected by most Christians because it makes perfect sense lining up with the Bible that everything just kind of came into being all at once.
Did that have anything to do with like LA and the demons of the city? Or do you think it was just
Good question. Good question. We're going to come back to that.
like already, if you'd have stayed in North Carolina, the same thing would have happened?
I think that LA gave me the permission to basically be like, because if I was back home, and my decision to not go to church back home would have involved several discussions with family.
Yeah.
Whereas my decision to not go to church in LA was just my decision
It's
to not
anonymous.
go to church.
Yeah.
So there's no doubt. So that's what I'll give the Christian critics, is the role that LA played is it did give me the freedom.
Sure.
Because we're not in a culturally Christian environment out here in the same way. It's like people believe all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And so my decision to be like, okay, well, we're just not going to be a part of this anymore.
Yeah.
Was made easier.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that you placed yourself in an environment where there was no accountability to grow in your faith, no accountability to lean into your faith, to be around other Christians, to read your Bible, and then you deconverted. That I remember hearing of someone who was also high profile Christian who just said, "Hey God, I'm going to stop reading my Bible, and you're going to have to prove yourself to me a different way." It's like you remove and relinquish the process of practicing your faith. Where do you think you're going to land, right?
I don't think he's trying to be genuine on this one at all. I think on the C.S. Lewis, maybe he just misunderstood it, but this is just completely misrepresenting Rhett.
And so then that was a huge moment for me. I remember coming home, still living in North Carolina. Again, a lot of people think that the story that is often told is that Link and I were Christians. We came to Los Angeles. We were corrupted by this sinful city, and we threw away our faith. And the reality, and I've told it many times, but it's passed over, is that all this happened when I was in North Carolina.
Right.
This happened when I was completely buckled into the Bible Belt as tightly as you can be, surrounded by people who agree with me about all these things, with no social pressure to deviate from that at all. In fact, a lot of social pressure to stay
To do
in the
the
fold.
opposite.
So ultimately, like, I'm appreciative of Rhett and Alex for having this conversation, but I really get the sense that that's kind of what happened. He went from the same way of thinking with certainty and a fundamentalism to his approach with faith, and just took the jersey, reversed it, and now he's a skeptic. And it still has the same degree of certainty and fundamentalism with his new view.
Again, this was completely misrepresenting what Rhett went through. Yes, Rhett started with a fundamentalist worldview that did not allow for other information such as evolution. But when this was challenged, it actually allowed him to take in other information. I remember he went to other places. He didn't just go, oh, well, evolution is right, therefore the Bible must be wrong. No, he went to other places and said, okay, well, how can I reconcile these two things? And went and looking for ways to keep his faith. People who deconvert or deconstruct from very strongly held beliefs, especially religious, it's not something that happens overnight. It's not something that happens from just one thing like evolution. Evolution was the thing that caused him to start to see the cracks in his worldview, and continuing to question his worldview and just adapt it to the information that he got was something that eventually, yes, led to him deconverting, but it was not just evolution that deconverted him. He didn't take this fundamentalist jersey and just saying, I have to be on this specific team, and then flip it over to be on a different team. No, he realized that maybe I don't actually need this jersey. Like, maybe I don't need to be forced into wearing this jersey, that I have to be on this team. Maybe I just don't need a jersey. Maybe I just don't need a team. There's all these different people with different jerseys and different teams saying, you need to wear our jersey. You need to come to our team. And he's just saying, you know, I'm good. I've been told that I need to wear this jersey, be on this team for so long, and maybe I don't need a jersey. Maybe I don't need a team. Maybe I can just do my own research and go wherever the truth tells me. That's not just taking a jersey and flipping it over. So if you made it this far and finished the video, thanks for watching. I'm really sorry that my video editing skills are not better than a 3rd grade level, but thanks for watching anyways. I just thought this would be a good video to make, and I obviously do not have much experience with it. But I appreciate you watching. Have a good one.